Good afternoon. Good afternoon, White Plains. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining this afternoon. Thanks for stopping in. If you're watching this later on or over the weekend, hope we do a good job today. Hope I do a good job today answering questions. We've got some great questions that were sent in related to our reopening and the phasing in of our students that's going to be beginning on Monday. So I'm going to do my very best to answer those questions. And as a reminder, if you have additional questions, you can always send them in to questions at wpcsd.ny.us. That email address is over in the title, and if you'd like, you can also give us a ring here in the office. But again, thanks so much for joining, and thank you to those of you who sent questions in as well. Lot to cover this afternoon, but I think very exciting things, and hopefully very positive. I do, unfortunately, need to begin with a very serious situation. Unfortunately, we continue to see throughout the country violence perpetuated against our brothers and sisters in the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. Reprehensible violence. Of course, everybody in the White Plains City School District stands in solidarity with all of our community members, and we must all use our voices, and we must all use any power that we have to not only support our community members, but also do our very best to educate our children against violence and in an anti-racist manner. And then education in an anti-racist manner is very different because we're teaching our children not to be racist. And these are very difficult situations and conversations to have with kids. Sometimes they're very difficult conversations to have with adults. But you can always start at what's right. And we know that these types of acts of heinous violence are not. And certainly we here in the White Plains City School District will continue to advocate as well as educate. And I thank you for joining us in that effort. It is important, and it is important for all of our community members to know that we stand with them always. So I appreciate you supporting and joining us there. In our Q&A today, I'm going to talk about a lot of sort of the nuances of phasing and fully reopening. It's exactly where we want to be. Exactly where we want to be would be no pandemic, of course, but given the circumstances, we are where we want to be. Certainly, many of us thought and hoped that we could be there sooner. But nevertheless, we stand here now and are excited and pleased about that. I do need to apologize, though. In some of our meetings, I have made mention that this really should take on sort of a celebratory feeling of welcoming our children back into the facilities, all of them full-time. And I do believe that. I believe that we should be celebrating this movement out of hybrid instruction and to the extent that we're able, and out of remote instruction to the extent that we're able. And that celebration should continue all the way through into September. But we do have a number of Tigers who, for a variety of reasons, need to continue to learn remotely. And that's okay. And I need to say this, especially if our children are listening. You're not going to miss anything if you can't come back to school starting on Monday. We're here for you, and we're going to continue to deliver instruction. You're going to be part of the classroom and everything that we're doing, and that is really important to us. And if I caused any additional stress or anxiety to families who aren't able to send their children back in person, I apologize for that. Certainly didn't mean to. Perhaps I let my excitement for being able to bring our children back get a little bit ahead of me. It's true, we are going to celebrate our children's re-entry back into school full-time, but we're going to celebrate our children's re-entry every day, and up to and including when we come back fully in September. And we also know that there are going to be children who are starting out fully remote, and as time passes may feel more comfortable, and I think these are some of the questions I have here too, may feel more comfortable, or parents and guardians, in coming back full-time, and that's a conversation that we can have too. But I did need to just offer that apology to any moms and dads or guardians, and certainly any of our Tigers out there who said, well, wait a second, I can't come back, I'm going to miss something. No, I did not mean to do that to you at all. And just please know that everybody is part of this spirit that we're trying to move back now into a more of a typical situation where our children are back in their classrooms regularly. So thank you for your understanding, and thank you for your grace in understanding I made a mistake there and I didn't want to further upset anybody for sure. CDC just a few minutes ago has updated its guidance to now 3 feet as acceptable in school settings. Some of you are probably kind of holding your head and saying, I don't understand, how can these guidelines change so quickly? I don't trust them now because they're coming, they're changing rapidly, and it just doesn't seem logical that they'd be changing so fast. And I completely understand that. One of the things that I learned, and I've been thinking about a lot, is that because we're still in this pandemic and there is no research associated with COVID-19 and the subsequent variants that we're now dealing with throughout the world, to the extent of this particular pandemic, that everything we're doing right now is the research is happening as we speak. So, scientists are collecting data, analyzing data over time in school districts that have been hybrid, school districts that have been in 6 feet or below 6 feet throughout the country or throughout the world, and then they're making their adjustments to their guidelines based on the data that they have in those particular studies. These are not huge studies. They're not very long longitudinal studies, obviously, but they are the best science that we have at the moment, which is why you're seeing things change so rapidly. And I know that that's a challenge for us. But the good thing is this: we always knew that we had that continuum 6 feet to 3 feet, masked and layered mitigation. So with all of those different steps that we can put into place to keep healthy individuals away from the virus, we have that in place in our facilities. I'll talk more about that. And we are going to still continue to try and physically distance as much as we can when we can. That's important. The pandemic isn't over. Yes, we're getting to a better place. Yes, there's more vaccination. It's going to be more vaccination available. I think we're hitting 100 million today vaccinated in the country. All good news. We have to stay vigilant, and we have to make sure that we're still looking out for our communities to reduce potential community spread. So we'll keep reiterating that. But I did want to just touch on that CDC change that just came out, because I know sometimes those things seem to come fast and furious, and there really is no detailed explanation. Certainly if you're just watching the news, you're not getting that full data dump on how they're making these decisions. Assessments. Standardized assessments this year. A lot of questions from moms and dads and students related to assessments. It is not logical. It makes no sense to me. I'm not going to pretend that it does. The federal government is requiring school districts all throughout the country to administer high-stakes standardized assessments. However, the federal government is telling school districts that they don't count. All right. So millions of dollars to administer assessments throughout the country that aren't going to count. The New York State Education Department, as well as our commissioner, have worked very, very hard to try and get a waiver approved for New York State. Unfortunately, that waiver has not been approved at this time. Parents and guardians, I want to be really clear about this. Parents and guardians have an option. You always have an option. Parents and guardians may refuse the assessments. That's a decision that you're going to make for your child, but you have to make that, and then you have to let your child's principal know whether or not they will be participating in the assessment. There's more details related to the administration of the assessments. They're shorter. There's a window of time now, and again, they're not going to be counted toward your child's progress. That also includes the Regents assessments. Will not be counted towards a graduation requirement, while passing the class will. So moms and dads and family, you really, that's a conversation certainly that you may have at home. If you want to reach out to us and talk it through individually related to your child, we're happy to do that. I know the principals and the guidance counselors are happy to do that. But I want everyone to understand that there are no negative consequences associated with a parent deciding that their child isn't going to take the assessment this year. Probably questions about that in the stack here, but I wanted to get that out there too for you, just in case that was an added layer of stress that you're worrying about. We don't want additional stress. There's enough stress. We want to try and minimize that to the extent that we can. The facilities look great. And I cannot thank our team members enough for the work that they've done to and are continuing to do to get our facilities ready to welcome back all of our children. We're probably somewhere around 85% of our students, 80 to 85% of our students have identified that they will be coming full return. And we anticipate that more children will come. And again, remember, we're planning for 100% return. So we're going to be ready. The facilities are coming together, and we will be able to welcome our kids back safely with layered mitigation beginning on Monday, the 22nd. Spring recess is around the corner, even though today it doesn't really feel like spring's around the corner. Please remember, if you're going to travel, first of all, enjoy yourself, be safe. But there are requirements related to travel when you return home. And I'm just reminding, we'll send out another reminder next week, but reminding everybody that if you do travel, please check in with the New York State Department of Health and the traveler form that's available there. It's a questionnaire that you would then answer, and it would provide you with feedback on what you need to do, if anything, related to your recent trip. There's a lot of detail and sort of changing goalposts related to travel. So rather than try to go through all of the different scenarios, visiting the New York State Department of Health website for travel is definitely the best approach. Now remember, if you're traveling via air, you're going to be filling out traveler cards at the airport or on board the airplane. And you really want to make sure that you're abiding by the expectations for travel. I do believe there's a pretty hefty penalty associated with folks who aren't following those guidelines. So just be reminded, but most importantly, please be safe, and please make sure that you're taking any needed precautions if you do intend to travel during spring recess. Okay, time for our questions. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. It's nice to see you all here. Thanks so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. Again, if you want to put some questions in the comments, you might want to wait to see if I hit your question, but you can throw it in there, and if I can get to those in our time frame, I'd be happy to do that too. If I don't hit your question, if I don't answer your question, you can always feel free to reach out to me directly. You can reach out to your child's principal, but certainly don't be afraid to reach out and ask. We want to make sure that everybody gets all of the information that they want and need as we make this next step in phasing our children back in. So let's get started right away with the questions. Social and emotional support is a topic here. Question is, how are you planning to have active social and emotional components for our children who may choose to come back later than the first day they're able to? I really appreciate that question. Kind of goes to my apology before. So the first of all, social and emotional learning is a major component all throughout our school district. If you aren't taken care of, you're not taking care of the child, the human, it's really difficult to reach that academic potential. We believe that. We are going to be very, very focused on social and emotional well-being as children are returning back to school. We need to check in with our kids. We need to make sure that our kids are okay. We need to listen to them. We need to hear from them if they want to share. All of those things. In many respects, the 22nd, for a lot of our children, is like going to be the first day of school. For some of our Tigers, it's going to be the first day that they've ever entered a classroom. For some of our Tigers, it's going to be the first day that they've ever entered their particular school. So we have to be very sensitive to that. We're going to be very sensitive to that, and making sure that we're easing kids back in, getting into the norms and the expectations and the routines of the school day. It would not surprise me at all, as I'm sure it won't surprise you, that our little ones, our kindergartners, are tired at the end of the academic day. You know, it's going to be different in many ways for many children, and we're sensitive to that. So we'll continue on with those types of supports indefinitely. So if your child's not coming back right away on Monday, that's no problem. If your child comes back in June, that's okay too. September is the first time my child's coming back. No problem. We're going to still continue to support our kids even through the opening of the 2021-2022 academic year. So hopefully that answers your question and helps out a little bit. This question is related to quarantining. Given the presence of highly infectious and severe variants of COVID, How is the Department of Health and our district handling quarantining if the exposed individual is fully vaccinated? Thank you for your question. It's important to note that the Department of Health is the primary authority on quarantining. So while there are avenues for fully vaccinated adults to be able to avoid isolation and quarantine, that all goes through the Department of Health, and it also includes the adult providing documentation that they are so vaccinated and the like. So initially, I would get caught up in a contact trace, and then I would then communicate with the Department of Health on what my status is, and then they could release me from the quarantine, or I might have to stay in the quarantine depending upon what the situation was. The variants, of course, are sort of a wrinkle in that they're not like the wild COVID-19, the original strain of COVID-19. And I think there's still, sort of the jury's still out there on how much, if any, resistance the vaccinations are providing against the variants. So I believe the science is still evolving there. Another question on quarantining. If a child tests positive on a bus, a classroom, does the entire bus or class have to quarantine? What's the protocol? Thanks for your question. It really depends. It depends on all of the factors involved in that exposure. So it's really difficult to give concrete answers to hypothetical exposure cases because so much matters. Did the person have a mask on? Was the mask below the person's nose? Was the person next to them not wearing their mask? Was their mask below their nose? All of these things will have a different effect on whether or not somebody needs to quarantine. We no longer just pick up huge swaths of people and the Department of Health quarantines and isolates. They are much more targeted now. And certainly if folks are abiding by the health safety precautions, like for instance, sitting in assigned seats, all the proper PPE and mitigation, it's going to diminish the potential for a quarantine or an isolation experience. So that's important. Thanks for your question. This question is about Wednesdays. For the Wednesday half days, will students be on campus or doing Zoom remotely? If on campus, what time will the pickup be? Thanks for your question. And I also want to just remind everybody, if you have questions particular to scheduling at your child's school, please don't hesitate to reach out to your child's principal or your child's teacher, as they'll be able to walk you through any questions related to the schedule. But the afternoons on Wednesdays is asynchronous. The child will be home. Your child will be home, or aftercare, whatever your arrangements are, and they will have work to do during that time as well. This question is also about Wednesdays. What can we as parents expect from Wednesday afternoons so that we can plan accordingly? Seems to be no uniformity across the district. For some, it's been a half day with little or no asynchronous work, while other children's day is completely full of activities. So my question is, what are the expectations for elementary age children on Wednesdays? And please enforce a standard across the district. Thank you for your question and your recommendation. We do have expectations for what Wednesdays will look like, as we've talked about, and I'm sure your child's principal has talked about this as well. It's not a half day with free time in the afternoon. The children are expected to continue to participate in their academic activities through the end of that day. And if you are experiencing any troubles or you have any questions related to your child's particular experience, please reach out to the teacher or your child's principal, and I'm sure that we could provide assistance. In terms of uniformity, it's hard for me to answer that question, only because I think I would ask for more details, except I will say it's very difficult to have cookie cutter experiences all throughout the school district, so I'm sure there definitely are differences, but we do want that afternoon to be a useful time of academics for our children. So thanks for the question, and again, feel free to reach out if you're not experiencing that. Next question is related to travel. Can you please highlight the protocol for families that travel over spring break? Sure. We talked just a little bit about that. Please, again, make sure that if you are traveling, you're taking the proper precautions, and you absolutely make sure that you are following the requirements related to potential quarantining, depending upon where you travel and when you return. Thanks for the question. This question is Zoom bombing. This is in regards to Zoom bombings at the high school. Understand that's happened a significant number of times. Teachers with derogatory language and threats, students exposed to language You mentioned previously an investigation was underway. Kids are returning in person. I'm concerned. What's the status of the investigation? What has been done to address the situation? Thank you very much. So yeah, Zoom bombings have really they have been an unfortunate, disgusting, and unfair situation that many teachers have had to deal with throughout the pandemic and remote learning and hybrid learning. And I shouldn't just say teachers, kids, right? Because it disrupts the class, and our children are in the class too. In many of these instances, they have occurred sort of in the beginning of the year when we were first ramping up remote learning and hybrid learning, and still learning ourselves, and also the platforms were learning about safety and security protocols and putting those into place. As time went on, the incidences have decreased, particularly if you're using, for instance, the Zoom platform. Other platforms don't necessarily have as good safety protocols, and we encourage folks not to utilize those that we can't secure. But they're not gone, right? So this is something we always have to be vigilant about. And I kind of think of it this way. A school building is secure. You have doors that are locked so that folks can't just come in. But doors can get opened. And that's something we all sort of have to be vigilant. We've all kind of worked through together. The situations that we identified at the high school that I spoke about a few months ago, we were able to identify the individual, and the appropriate steps were taken to handle that situation and make sure that it wouldn't occur again. We did also identify folks who were Zoom bombing from as far away as Canada, Mexico. I mean, you name it, you find different IP addresses, and these are people outside of the White Plains City School District. And I know it's a problem that has occurred everywhere from corporation, Fortune 500 corporations, to courtrooms, to newscasts, and of course in schools. And it's a challenge, and it's something that we shouldn't have to deal with. We have taken steps to make sure that we are as secure as we possibly can be, and we give as much power as we can to the instructor to be able to control that room. Hey, it happened to me. I was doing a big webinar for our faculty and staff members at the beginning of the year, and somebody jumped in that shouldn't have been there and tried to disrupt, and I was able to navigate that, fortunately, but it still happened. Now, in order to get into our Zooms, you have to be in the network, you have to be using your district email, you have to have your name up, you have to be let in by the teacher. So there are a lot of protocols there to help minimize the chances of that occurring. And hopefully, as we transition back into in-person, we can sort of leave those concerns behind. But I will say, we learned, and it was painful and at times disgusting because of the things that these individuals would say. But at the same time, it gave us the impetus to make sure that we were doing everything we could to secure those virtual classrooms. So hopefully that answers your question, particularly related to in-district consequences. If you're a student and you behave inappropriately in a classroom, we have a code of conduct, and that code of conduct is going to be followed. And I think our students, they get that, they understand that, and by and large don't want to disrupt their learning environments. All right, this question is about prom and graduation. Will you consider having an outdoor prom? I know that our high school team is working on a prom-like activity for our Tigers toward the end of the year. What's the decision about graduation? Graduation is going to take place at Laux Field outdoors. And again, I'm sure the high school team would be happy to talk more about this with you as well. How many guests can attend if outside? Guests will be limited, and again, we have to abide by the density requirements from the New York State Department of Health for outdoor events and gatherings. We have been advocating that for commencement exercises, the attendance numbers be increased, provided that the school district can secure physical distancing and contact tracing requirements there. So hopefully we'll see those numbers increase. Presently there are about 150, I believe 150 or half capacity. Will there be another survey about students going into school or staying virtual? Probably not. If you selected fully virtual, fully remote, and you make a determination that you want to come back into school, you just need to reach out to your child's principal. And I think that was it. Okay. We do have some tentative dates for moving up ceremony at Highlands. I think is the 22nd of June, and graduation, high school commencement graduation is the 23rd, and the rain date is on the 24th. Again, there will be more information for parents and guardians of Rising Tigers as we get closer to those end of the year activities. Another question. I'm a bit disgruntled as a parent. Many of my friends who are parents of students about a survey for a musical festival in lieu of a prom. These children, and I emphasize children, have lost so much as seniors. No junior prom, no senior ditch day, no class trip, no fundraising for fun stuff, and now no prom. Would very much like to know why the parents weren't involved in the survey and who thought a musical festival can in any way replace a prom. My question is how we as parents can make prom happen. Even if there's no food, out in a senior parking lot where kids can dress up, masked, and dance, and pretend for at least a second that there's a little magical rite of passage. Thanks for your question. Yeah, it is unfortunate that we can't have a traditional prom. The venues, as I just mentioned about capacity, the venues aren't permitted to have us in full capacity be able to participate in a traditional prom. What we are looking to be able to do is create a culminating prom-like, right? Because again, we're not going to be at a fancy hall or anything like that. Activity for our Tigers that will also be safe and fun. And while it's not like the traditional prom, I know the team at the high school is working really hard to try and put something together that the kids will love. And of course, that involves the kids. Being part of that planning process. So I definitely sympathize with parents and guardians who are concerned about prom, and certainly Tigers who are concerned about prom. But ultimately, it's really out of our hands. It's not something that we're choosing not to do. It's just not available to us right now. Will prom be available in June? Will they relax the standards and allow us to go in June? They may, but unfortunately, securing and setting up events takes more time sometimes than the notice that we get for changes in the guidance. So we need to plan now. In fact, we started planning months ago for our end of the year activities because we wanted to make sure that our children, particularly at the high school level, don't go without activities this year, even if they're a bit different. So I definitely understand and respect and sympathize. We all wish that we could have the traditional prom. But at the same time, we're going to do our very best to make sure we're bringing activities and fun events for the kids in ways that we can do it, within the guidelines that are in play right now. Yes, I see, Ms. Jones. Thanks. Mount Pleasant School District is doing a traditional prom. We have probably 500 or so students in our graduating class. If half of them decide to go to prom, well, I don't need to do the math for you. So our numbers are a bit different, and our numbers are going to allow us to do things or not do things that smaller graduating classes may have in front of them. So thanks for that. Lunch without masks. Children and staff are more exposed during lunch breaks when masks are down and indoors. If restaurants cannot operate at full capacity, what is the difference for schools? Why are schools allowing it? When our most vulnerable sector, non-vaccinated children, are exposed. These are inconsistent safety guidelines. Thanks for your question. I would direct you definitely to CDC and or New York State Department of Health guidelines related to infection spread and also the vulnerability of children based on what we know right now. I'm not going to argue any of those points. To be sure, when you have your mask down and you're eating and you're talking, you could definitely be more susceptible to picking up any pathogen that could be spread through the air. Absolutely. That said, we are putting in place layered mitigation like barriers, even in the lunchrooms, and physical distancing, and the opportunity to go into alternate spaces so that children can be distanced as much as possible, with the respect and understanding that our kids are still going to want to socialize a little bit too. So trying to sort of balance on that tightrope and making sure we're attending to the safety and security requirements, while at the same time allowing kids to be able to talk and enjoy themselves a bit at lunch and recess is important to us too. Moms and dads are going to want their kids to do different things, and that's okay. Some moms and dads and guardians are going to want their kids to wear double masks, maybe double masks and a face shield. That's okay. Maybe some parents and guardians are going to want their child to wear a face shield while they eat. That's okay too. So really, however folks feel most comfortable in approaching this, we're supportive of that, as long as, at the bare minimum, we're following all of the required, mandated health safety guidelines. American Rescue Act. I understand the White Plains School District has been granted $9.1 million as part of the American Rescue Act. How will those funds be allocated, understanding that 20% must be used for learning loss? Thank you very much for your question. Yes, this is good news for school districts all throughout the country. We have been told that our allocation is $9.1 million, which is fantastic. We've not seen any of that yet. We've not seen all of the requirements related to how the money is to be allocated or how it can and cannot be spent. We are also looking at the time frame within which it needs to be expended, and we believe that it will be over a period of years, which is important. Also, how it can be expended. So what we are going to do is use these dollars. Remember, they're one-time only dollars, so we can't use them for funding and costs that will have legacy associated with it. So it's not as if you could hire more people, right? Because once the funds are gone, they're gone. So you need to use them as smart as you possibly can to strengthen the school district in ways that will last for as long as possible. I was going to say forever, but as long as possible. We're looking at all kinds of options. Everything from HVAC and capital projects to programming, specialized programming for our children, experiences for our children, certainly backfilling any gaps that children that have grown, I should say, due to the pandemic, and supporting our school, generally supporting our school district in as best a fashion as we can. When we actually find out how much we really are going to be receiving and how long and what the requirements for the expenditures are, we'll share them with the community, of course, when the Board of Education will share them with the community, and we will have a plan to put those funds to good use to strengthen our school district moving forward. This is related to in-person Board of Education meetings. The White Plains Board of Education has decided it is safe to bring back the entire student body, although they themselves continue to hold meetings through the safety of Zoom. Why is this, and when can we expect to see board meetings being held in person again? Thanks for your question. Board of Education is meeting in person on Monday, the 22nd. I should also make mention that the Board of Education has tried various ways to meet during the pandemic, in person included. And what we found was the attendance was really, understandably, limited and low in person, and that it was very hard for folks to, we got this feedback from the community, very hard for folks to hear us with masks on during Zoom meetings, and there was a lot of feedback and such. Zoom actually worked well to be able to deliver information and communication opportunities to all of our community members throughout the course of the pandemic with regard to board meetings. So, I can speak, and I know they wouldn't mind me saying this, none of our Board of Education members are fearful of being in our buildings. That was never the issue. It was making sure that we were operating in a way that would be as transparent as possible and effective in terms of communication as possible. So we're happy to be coming back together on Monday, without a doubt. And we look forward to more and more and more in-person opportunities as we move toward the spring. This question is related to the hybrid schedule. We spoke with several medical experts and professionals about opening schools. The majority have expressed concerns about boldly, fully reopening schools at 100% capacity, especially with the new variants going around and with spring break. Pediatricians have also said that children are getting sick at the same rate as adults. I don't know if that's accurate. That they are not immune. They definitely are not immune. So why? Why couldn't we keep everyone on a hybrid schedule and be bold in bringing all 100% back fully in September? Thank you for your question. It was never our intention to elongate the hybrid and remote experience for our children a moment longer than it absolutely needed to be. And we started talking about this, and anybody who's interested can certainly go back and take a look at those reopening committee meetings as far back as last summer, and trying to make sure we were paving a way forward that as soon as it was possible, we could welcome all of our children back into our facilities. It is critically important for kids to be in school with their teachers. We all know that. So we still have the remote opportunity for parents and guardians who wish to remain remote until the September of the next academic year. That doesn't go away. And that's going to stay for the remainder of this year. So there still is a choice. However, all of the data, all of the science, and all of the recommendations that we've gotten right now from, again, doctors and also scientists and also folks on the reopening committee, has been to be safe and be smart as we phase back in, make sure we have that layered mitigation. The first step of which was making sure that everybody who was willing and able was vaccinated in our school district, which we were able to achieve. So we believe that we're in a very strong position to be able to welcome our children back starting Monday. Without a doubt, if we start to see numbers going in the wrong direction, we will make adjustments. We don't want to see us taking steps backward, but we do feel very comfortable and very secure in the decision that we've made right now. And we also know, without a doubt, that our children who are returning full-time will be better off for it. Thank you for your question. Okay, there are 4 here. If at some point the district learns of the spread in one of its classrooms, will this information be made public to the school community? Yes, absolutely. Anytime we have cases of COVID-19 identified, they go up on the COVID-19 report card or dashboard, whichever you like to call it, and are reported to our school community. So yes, absolutely. Will the barriers in the cafeterias and the elementary schools be installed before the children return? Yes. Has the random testing in schools started yet? Yes. If so, can you share generalized results? Will the results be made public on an ongoing basis? All of the results that come out positive are made public via that dashboard again, and also we share that information at the school level. In the month of March, Ridgeway has already been notified of 6 positive cases. Is there a threshold that will trigger school shutdown for a period of time because there are too many positive cases in that school community? Yeah, so thanks for the questions. We absolutely have gone through we've been going through this situation all year long. And the cases in our schools, identified cases in our schools, thankfully have been going down. Yes, absolutely. If we start to see increases in schools, we have the ability to pivot to remote learning in classroom, in singular classrooms, or even at the entire school level if we needed to. Those decisions are always made in conjunction with information that we receive and guidance that we receive from the Department of Health, as well as our district doctor and all stakeholders involved in that decision-making process. We hope that that's not going to be the case. If it does happen, as it has happened in this year previously, we will make those adjustments as needed. Hope that answered your question. Okay, 3 questions here. Said on a number of occasions that our community rate is low, and that is part of the reason schools can open safely. I think I probably say that our rates have been going down and definitely are lower than they have been, absolutely. However, data from the New York Times and the CDC state that Westchester has a high rate of COVID. Okay, can you help square these 2 opposing items on which view on the local COVID rate is accurate? Well, far from it for me to argue with CDC. I believe, from my perspective, the number of cases that we're seeing right now in our community is definitely lower than what we have been living through. Let me say this from the school vantage point as well, than what we've been living through in the earlier part of the academic year. I would have to look at those. I would have to look at those data to really know, because I don't know what they are. This is not about whether schools should open, but about what data parents should use to decide if they should send their children to school. That is an amazing point. Here's my answer to that point. From my opinion, if parents are concerned about whether or not they should send their child back to school in person, they should ask their healthcare provider, their pediatrician. That's where I would go. I mean, personally, I wouldn't look at the data in the community of community spread or anything like that and make my decisions solely based on those numbers. I don't know the veracity of them. I would absolutely feel comfortable asking or recommending that you connect with your pediatrician. For the 88 high school children that have contracted COVID this school year, did any of them get seriously ill or end up with long hauler COVID symptoms? I know you can't give specifics, but looking for any trends. So I should say this. Fortunately, I've not learned of any such trends, and I think I'll leave it there. This is a request, not a question. Okay, bringing all the children back will only work if the community follows the public health and CDC guidelines. Past few weeks, my observation is the exact opposite. Less proper mask wearing, less social distancing, more crowded parties with no masks, etc. If we want to protect our kids who are not vaccinated, please follow the guidelines. I echo that request 100%. Please. The progress that we've all made in so many ways can be undone if we're not all committed to continuing to stay the course. I know everybody here, everybody listening to this is committed to that. Please continue to share that message all throughout our community. We want our kids to be back in school every day. In order to make that happen, in order to ensure that with the least amount of disruption possible, we all have to do our part to keep as healthy as possible. So thank you for all that. Those are all the questions that I had sent in. I see we have a bunch in the comment section right now. And here comes Mrs. Torres. Thank you. Excellent. Oh, great questions. Thank you so much. Yes, will third grade math assessments be used this year as a data point for enrichment programming? So let's take it further, and we'll even go out into all the other grade levels. No. High stakes standardized assessments are not going to be used as a data point this year for children participating in accelerated courses, enrichment program, and any of those types of areas. So that shouldn't be a factor in your mind on whether or not your child is going to be taking that assessment. We are moving away. We want to move further away from that and use other multiple measures to help our children in terms of their placement. I hope that answered your question. What is the distance between desks? I saw a picture, but the clear panel covers only. I'm sorry. What is the distance between their desks? I saw pictures, but the clear panel covers only the desk area, not the child. Yes. So the barriers that are on our children's desks, if you imagine a school desk, they come up from the side and they go out into the front, and they're exactly what they are. They're a barrier for where you're facing. They don't cover the children. But Joe, a child could lean back and sneeze. Yes, they absolutely could. You're right. That's why we have, we continue to wear facial coverings and continue to have that physical distancing. Distance between desks is at least 3 feet. In many instances, we're able to get much more than 3 feet. We're trying to physically distance as much as possible. And again, with barriers and with facial coverings, masks, all of those things will go a long way to help us reduce any potential spread of any illness, including COVID-19. How many kids will be on the bus, and how will they be sitting? Great question. It really depends on the number of children who are going to be riding any particular bus. We're trying to keep the numbers as low as possible. We know we're not going to be able to keep it at like 12 or 15 on bus. There's just no way we could do that. But we are trying to keep them as distant as possible. Everybody's going to have assigned seats. Their siblings will have to sit together. Their windows open. The vents on top open. All of those procedures are going to be in place, but definitely, when you're thinking about whether or not you want your child to ride the bus, that's obviously, I would think something you're thinking, how many kids are going to be there? It really will depend. We're not going to buses will not be overcrowded. If we need to add buses to bus routes, we will absolutely do that. But it's not really possible for me to say how many children are on each bus. It definitely won't be full capacity, but we're trying to because we're trying to distance as much as possible. But it's also not going to be, as I said, 12 children. I'm assuming that even though CDC relaxed the distance to 3 feet, the classrooms will still be utilizing partitions. Yeah, absolutely. And this is an important point. The CDC came out, and it's all over the news, right? You'll remember, we have been talking about this continuum for a long time. There has always been a continuum, and it was dependent upon the layered mitigation in place. So I think it's helpful that as we see the guidelines evolve, and the science evolve, and that will help us along the way. But we are still going to keep those pieces of layered mitigation in place, because we want to make sure that we have as many barriers as possible. I know it's not ideal. I know it's not ideal to have a mask on and then also be sitting behind a partition. It's not. It's better than the alternative. Absolutely better than, in my opinion, better than the alternative, in that we're able then to get our children back into school. So more to come on that, I'm sure. There'll be continued evolving guidelines. I have no doubt about that, and we'll keep sharing that with you. Can we rely on the dates in the district calendar as far as the last day of classes for the high school 610 finals and Regents? Yeah, we haven't made any calendar adjustments right now. If we do need to make any calendar adjustments, we will absolutely communicate that with you. But it's not going. I don't believe it's going to be a scenario like we saw last year, when everything was in flux and we had no idea how things were panning out. The school year is the school year right now. We still have a requirement in terms of our instructional days, and we intend to continue to follow that schedule. Excuse me. Is there also a Regents opt-out option? Are the Regents only being administered in school or also remotely? So tests are being administered in school. There's no such thing as an opt-out. But here, I could say it this way. If parents and guardians refuse the assessment, refuse to take the assessment, I'm not going to take the assessment, thank you, but no thank you. There is no negative consequence for children this year. It does not impede your graduation. It does not count against you in any way. It is important to note that if a child does take the Regents examinations, that score will appear on their transcript. There's no way to not have the score on their transcript. So, just again, as you're thinking about these things, I try to share as much information as I know with you, to hopefully help you when you make a decision. What are the results of high school students' survey results? I'm not sure I know. There are a lot of surveys, so I'm going to guess on this. I'm going to guess it's the percentage of children who are coming back full-time to the high school. I think we were somewhere around, I want to say 60, 75, something around there right now. I think it's going to go up. I anticipate that it probably will, for students who have the option, have the choice to come back full-time. And we certainly hope it does, because we want to be able to welcome back all of our kids. But we also recognize that some children won't be able to come back full-time right now. I should say this, but definitely Principal Martinez and the team would have those numbers for you like that. So just feel free to send an email if you have a question. Or I'm sure they'll go through that again and updates to you. Question is, can you use some of the funds for SAT and ACT prep for all high school students, as their grades on these tests have a large impact on their futures? That's a really interesting question. It will be interesting. So I don't know. We may be able to use funds that would assist with taking tests like ACT and SAT. It will be interesting to see if the testing paradigm that we presently have in place survives the transformational shifts that we had to go through during the pandemic. Colleges aren't using SATs right now to admit students, or ACTs. And the question is sort of out there. I know in academia they're really debating, is there a new paradigm? Is there a new form or a new way that we should be looking at students and growth and potential, or in terms of higher education? So two parts to your question. I'm not sure about the funds. I would guess that you probably could in some form or fashion, but it will be interesting to see if SAT and ACT continue to remain as part of the sort of your expected admissions process. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions. I'm just going to skip down and see if there was anything else. I just want to say thanks to everybody. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate it. Thank you. Listen, on behalf of the Board of Education and myself, our team here, just Thank you so much. It has been a long road. We're not through it yet. We still need to keep doing what we're doing, but we are definitely making progress for our kids and for our community. Reopening committees not going away. Information sharing is not going away. I'm still going to give updates. I don't know if that makes you happy or sad, but I'm still going to give you updates. We're still going to make sure that we try to over-communicate with you. And of course, as always, we are available to you anytime. Thank you very much, as always. Thanks for everything you continue to do. Thanks for all of the support, and also thanks for the critical feedback. That's helped a lot. I really do appreciate that. We will see you soon. I hope everyone has a great weekend. And again, just stay strong, stay healthy, and stay WP proud. Take care, everybody.